Hey everyone, Chris Bianco. It's your fearless leader. You guys know who it is. Hey, listen, it's August 2nd. And honestly, this video should have probably went out a week ago, but we know all about the changes and the lawsuit and everything's going into effect yesterday. So this, instead of doing some Zoom call that half of you are not going to show up to, I thought I'd shoot a video, send it out to you, and you guys can get caught up at, in the next day or so. You're not tied down to a certain time of day. All right, so let's talk about it. I'm going to break this video down into three things. It's going to be a little bit lengthy, but hang in there with me. We have a lot to discuss, okay? The three areas I'm going to break this down into is what actually happened, what forms are going to be required. We all know buyer-broker agreements, but there are some other forms that I want to talk about and how to use those. And the third thing is workarounds. What are we going to do and how are we going to establish what we're doing to get paid, especially with buyers? Okay, so let's step up. Number one would be what happened. All right, so it's an antitrust lawsuit, not fair business. In other words, not fair business practices. And it was about, price fixing commissions and things like that, which, as agents, we all think is bullshit, whatever. Hey, listen, I'm sitting outside, so I'm going to get a little iced tea here going, and it's hotter than hell out here. So anyway, so what happened was it was really about price fixing commissions. Okay, so what are the changes that were made other than I think it was $680 million settlement. Okay, the changes that were made is no longer can we offer commissions on the MLS. All right, we're going to discuss how we're going to do that, okay, how we're going to play that game. Number two, what it's supposed to do is open up more transparency between the buyer, the buyer, seller, buyer's agent, selling agent, or listing agent, and transparency and all that kind of stuff. Who's paying who, how much, and where the money's coming from, and how it'll be dispersed, and all that kind of stuff. And it's a major confusion. We used to look at the MLS listing, send the MLS listing in the title. There's how it got paid. Here's who's paying it, and it was pretty simple. Okay, so how are we going to work this out? One of the number one questions I have is, Chris, how do we find out what a commission is? Well, maybe we don't need to. Okay. Number two, how do I ensure I get paid? Well, we're going to discuss that too. Okay. And number three, what's the new forms or what's the new format? What is the new protocol? What is the new etiquette? How are we handling this? Okay. So we're going to discuss that. So that's what happened. And that's really the effect of everything that has been going on. The three things that boil down to is how do we get the information on concessions? How are we going to, make sure that we get paid? Okay, instead of somebody just saying, well, it's 2% or 2.5% or 3% or whatever it is. Okay, and some of that. So let's jump into the forms. Okay, there are, from the buyer side, we're going to look at let's start with the selling side. Okay, because the selling side only has one additional document. Okay, what we know about this is, and everybody knows this, we're going to have a whole shitload of unrepresented buyers, especially on the lower level, housing pricing, entry level housing market, right? There are going to be people out there, Chris, that can't afford to pay me. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? Okay, here's what you do. All right. So let me back up a step and say, at the end of the day, I don't think this is really going to make a huge interruption in the way that real estate's being done. I think we're going to consistently see sellers pay the commissions. I think you're going to see a few knuckleheads out there that try not to or try to negotiate it during the process. And we're going to talk about all that. But here's what we're going to do, okay? One of the new documents that you're going to use as a buyer's agent, you're going to use an additional compensation form, okay? It's on Transaction Desk. It's on Zip Forms. If you're an old son of a bitch like myself, it's still on Zip Forms. It's there, okay? Couple of things that talks about, the additional compensation, is that the buyer and the seller are going to agree what the buyer's agent's going to get. Keep in mind, the listing agent is covered. He has a listing agreement, right? And that's all specified in there. This is really about the buyer's agent, who the hell's paying him and how much. So buyer and seller are going to sign it, okay? And basically what it says, and again, for all you guys that are just going to get it signed and not read it and know what's in it, I'll tell you the biggest part of it. You can't ask for anything more than what's in that document, okay? If you put in there 3%, then that's it. And that kind of coincides with the buyer-broker agreement. So you're going to sign this document. At the time you're signing the contract, you got a buyer, he selected a house, you fill out the contract, you get the agency, all the bullshit, all the documents that we require in a broker file. You're also going to include this document. It's called the additional compensation form. Again, it's available through AAR, Transaction Desk, whatever it is. You're going to use that form. You're going to fill that out and you're going to send it to them. Send it to the listing agent. And basically it's going to say in there, hey, I want 3%. I want 2.5%. You start the negotiation. There's a fly right here. Can you see him? Anyway, you guys start the negotiation. Don't sit back and just take what's given to you. You start the negotiation with an additional compensation form. Okay? You're going to send that in along with your contract. If it's signed and agreed upon, guess what? You're going to send that to title as well, so they have escrow instructions on how much to pay you and where it's coming from. So those will also be used as escrow instructions. Okay, the second form we're going to use, we all know this, buyer-broker agreement. Okay, 3 things that I want to talk about on the buyer-broker agreement. Okay, let me go back to my notes because I really worked hard on this. Oh, on okay, the buyer-broker agreement. A couple things I want to talk about on the buyer-broker agreement is that it is between you and the buyer, right? This is a deal between you and the buyer. It's basically like a listing agreement, except there's not a property involved. It's a contract for employment. Same thing. It's just a buyer-broker agreement. Okay, so I'm going to skim over that pretty quickly because we've all been circling around this damn thing for the last 6 months trying to figure out and knowing that we have to use it. Okay, so when your broker files come in, I'm going to ask for 2 additional documents, an additional compensation form and a buyer-broker agreement. Okay, those are for buyer files. Okay, what the biggest thing in the buyer-broker agreement that I can tell you that you want to watch out for is line 20 states that you cannot ask for more than what's in that file on that document. Okay, so if you fill that out for 3%, then you can't, and the buyer and the selling, the seller is willing to pay the 3%, you can't go to the buyer for another buck or two. It caps out. Your total pay, no matter where it comes from, is what is listed on that document. Keep that in mind, okay? Because now we're going to be in a time frame and in an environment where we're asking buyers for compensation. You can't ask in addition to, all right? So keep that in mind. All right. So those 2 documents are going to be with every buyer file that I see from all of you guys. You're going to do a great job with that. I know you are. I'm not going to have to hound you for them. I don't really have to hound people for documents. The only thing I really have to do is hound people for corrections. Yes. So anyway, so I'll be looking for that. Okay. The last thing I want to talk about on the buyer-broker agreement is it clearly states in the buyer-broker agreement that you have provided that document prior. In other words, before you ever showed them a house, okay? With the hypersensitivity of this, guys, I will be looking at dates. So if I see a contract date, Kevin McKee, you're good at this, that has the same date on the buyer-broker agreement, I'm going to know you had it signed long after you're showing properties. I'm going to know that. And I gotta have you guys, start that negotiation, okay? Consider it like this, okay? You sit down for a listing agreement, you send them the listing agreement, you send them the spuds, you send them the HOA addendum, you send them the agency, you send them all the documents it takes to list the file long before you ever list it, you ever throw it on the MLS. Think of it like that. These are the documents I need prior. I need this document signed. I'm going to represent you. There's a compensation amount there. And obviously, I can't do this, but you guys certainly can. You can always throw me under the bus. This is a required document prior to me getting you in the car by my broker. I am the broker, and a lot of people look at me like, well, you write the laws. You can change the laws and rules. But anyway, so throw me under the bus. I don't give a shit. But that's the 2 documents that I need in all files coming through on when we're representing buyers. Okay, another problem with this law is going to be, and we all know this, we're brilliant people, we watch the news, we're free thinkers, all that kind of shit. So anyway, here's the other thing that we know is coming our way, and that is we're going to start dealing and seeing more and more and more unrepresented buyers. Okay, got the guy that drives around the neighborhood he wants to live in, calls on the sign, runs through an open house, whatever it is. Okay, by the way, get your yard signs out. All right, let's talk about some things on what we're going to do for changes that apply to the listing side of things. Okay, all right, so if you guys got a guy coming in and says, hey, I want to buy this house, I don't have the money to have representation, but I want you to write the offer and I want you to submit it, and this is where I want to be. Okay, Okay, we're going to use it, and it's been in there forever, but it's a document called unrepresented buyer disclosure. Unrepresented buyer disclosure. We are going to require that if there is no compensation paid to an agent. I want that in the file. And again, number one reason is protection. Okay. Let me go over that document because very few of you are aware of it. Very few of you have even looked at it. A couple of things that you're going to need to know about it. Okay. What we want to know, and this is a disclosure. Keep in mind, it's called unrepresented buyer disclosure, right? So and the disclosure really is really simple. A disclosure says what people are responsible for. Okay, so here's what we're responsible for. We're responsible for basically five things. Okay, loyalty to the buyer, obedience to the buyer. If you ask me for something, I got to get it for you, right? Disclosures. Okay, I want you guys to think of an unrepresented buyer in the same concept as you would deal with an agent. You're going to deal with them just like an agent. So on the disclosure side, we're still going to send them the SPDSs, the HOA disclosure. We're going to send them all the shit, the clue report, whatever else is out there, right? We're going to send them their documents. We're going to send them all of that stuff. What you don't have to do, if you read the document, I would strongly, strongly, strongly encourage you guys to read it, okay? What you don't have to cover with them are, and look at Section E. Section E of that document will tell you what you're not responsible to do. You're not responsible to protect their interests. That's their deal, okay? You're not responsible for timelines pertaining to the contract. Hey, if you miss your 10 days and you got your repair list in on day 12, tough shit. Wasn't my job. You signed that document. You should have read it. And if you didn't, it explains in there, I'm not responsible for sending you that. I'm not responsible for making sure you get your inspections ordered in a timely manner, that you get to all that. I'm going to give you everything I'm required to give you by the seller through the AAR purchase contract, but I'm not advising you on any of it. I'm not telling you what are good inspection companies, what are bad inspection companies. I'm not advising you on anything. I can't. Okay. Then the next thing I want you to do, and this is just a standard of practice. Okay. Doesn't mean that I don't need a document on this. I don't need anything, but in the best standard of practice. So when I got to go to court for one of these asshole unrepresented buyers that's making a claim that we screwed them, which probably is going to happen, that we have some sort of a document that advises them that on AAR online, Arizona Association of Realtors, AAR online, that they can get a buyer's advisory for free. It's available to the public. And the buyer's advisory will tell you what you need to do, the process of buying a home. Okay? The reason why I'm going to tell them that is to protect myself, my brokerage, my client as the seller. I'm going to tell them that. Okay? The reason why we don't give it to them is because that now constitutes implied representation. If you hand it to them, here you go, Joe and Mary, read this thing. You're advising them to read it. You've implied representation. We are not implying representation at any stretch. What we do tell them is, hey, it's available to you. You should go read it. Okay? AARonline.com. Put in the search bar, buyer's advisory. I would suggest that you look at that, because the last thing I want to do is get into a lawsuit, which I am absolutely certain I'll win, because some idiot bought a house that I listed that had 47 pedophiles circled around it within a 2-block radius, and now they found out after it closed, and they're trying to hold me responsible for it. According to the unrepresented buyer disclosure, I don't have to tell them that. They're representing themselves, right? I'll go to court, I'll win, because I have this document. That's inevitable, but I'm covered, okay? And not only that, I have a copy of an email that I sent to the buyer stating that he should probably go on AARonline.com and pull the buyer's advisory. I tried to advise him to the best of my ability without implying representation. So there we go. Those are the 3 documents that we're going to be using, okay? Again, let me paraphrase. In the buyer's document, buyer's file, your buyer broker file, what I want to see are the two additional documents: buyer broker agreement as required by ADRE, actually the federal government, and number two, I want to see the additional compensation consent form. That's you asking to be paid or starting the negotiation, in other words. On the selling file, if you're working an open house or you get a signed call, you get something in escrow, we're going to see a lot more of that. I want to see the unrepresented buyer disclosure. Okay? All those forms are available in Transaction Desk or online at Zip Forms. They're in your library. Add them to your templates on your buyer files, whatever you got to do. Okay? So, what I said what we would cover would be number one, what happened, talked about that, how it's going to change our business, what we're going to do in order to compensate that, and number three, the workarounds. Okay, so let's get to number three. For me, okay, again, I'm going to tell you, I'm representing a buyer. I'm going to have my buyer broker agreement signed, 3%, okay? I'm going to do every buyer broker agreement at 3%. I'm going to tell you why, okay? I'll work for 2.5%. That's the standard commission after the housing rush of 2003 to 2006, right? All the commissions started to come down. They haven't really gone back up yet. We're starting to see a little bit of that, but basically the standard commission up there is about 2.5%. Okay, I'm going to work for 2.5%. I decide, but I'm going to do every one of my buyer broker agreements at 3%. And here's why. I'm going to sit back and tell my buyer, here's the thing: when I send out that additional consent form, compensation consent form, it's going to show 3%. I'm going to send in my buyer broker agreement. I'm going to show that you and I discussed 3%, okay? And that's what my expectation is. That's what I'm getting paid. I'm going to send that in with my contract. I'm going to have the seller self-negotiate and go, well, shit, if I don't accept this 3%, $500,000 house, I'm offering 2.5. Let me think about this. A half a point I got to come up with in addition is $2,500. My house has been on the market 123 days. I'll pay the $2,500. To me, it's like a price reduction to $2,500. What do I care? I'm already giving the guy 10. Why not give him 12.5 in price reductions? Okay, so he takes the deal, right? Okay, but I'm going to have a side deal with my guy, my buyer, and I'm going to say, hey, listen, I'm going to put in an email, whatever you feel comfortable with. I'll write a little addendum to our buyer broker agreement, whatever you want. But I'm going to work for 2.5%. So if I get the 3, I'm going to give you the half a point towards your closing costs. Perfectly fine on a HUD for the agent to contribute to the buyer's closing costs. Buyer's agent, perfectly fine, legal, just disclosed. Okay. But the intent is for them to start at 3 and work me down to what we got. So you don't have to pay anything. So I'm willing to take 2.5. So let them come back with a counter. Forget it. I'll take it, So let's sign the buyer broker agreement for 3. I'm going to send that along with my additional compensation form, along with my contract. I'm going to send all that shit into them and let them self-negotiate. See what I come out with. Let that agent pick up the phone and go, no, we're only paying 2. Okay, well, now your seller knows he's jeopardizing the deal over 1%. You know that, right? Because I'm not sure my guy's going to pay that one. I'm not sure he's going to give me $5,000 on a $500,000 house. I don't know. He doesn't have the money. So we're going to go away. So that's why I would do the buyer broker agreement at 3%. Okay? Because at the end of the day, you're going to give it back to him anyway. It makes it easier for that guy to sign it, blah, 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 blah. It works out really well that way. All right? So, again, to recapitulate, 3 documents we're talking about. We're talking about buyer broker agreement. I need to see that in all your buyer files from here on out. I need to see that dated prior to a contract date. Okay. Number 2, we're going to use the additional compensation form. Okay. That's our negotiating tool. We're going to send that in along with the contract. Got it? Right? Okay. That's a great tool to use. Okay. Now, how are we going to see some things worked around? You got a seller that's refusing to pay an agent. I hate agents. They're losers. They didn't do shit. They're not the ones doing the marketing. I'm not paying a buyer's agent. It's not my representation. Why should I pay for their lawyer? All the bullshit we hear, right? Okay. Here's a couple different ways you can do it. Okay. Prior to writing the contract, there's no compensation on this. So you go to your buyer and you say, hey, let's do this. Okay. Let's write in seller concessions. Let's go in there and let's ask for 2.5% in seller's concessions, and we're going to slide that, and you're going to pay me, through your buyer broker agreement. Make sense? So we're actually getting the money from the seller. He's paying you, right? He's paying you, and then you're going to pay me his money. It's like you take it in this hand and you put it in this hand and give it away. There's a way we can do it, okay? If you got a guy that's really sticking to it. Otherwise, you just, normally what we're hoping for and what I anticipate is that the seller will just sign the additional compensation agreement. You send that in with title and away you go, okay? With your contract, you send it to title with your contract and the pertaining documents and away you go. So there's your commission agreement. But if they're refusing to, you can get it through compensation or concessions. You can get it through concessions. Another way that you can do it would be if you, I lost my place on this. Unrepresented. Okay, we talked about that buyer broker. Okay, so basically, what I want to kind of focus on is this. Okay, so here's the deal. You get your seller gets the HUD. They look at all this. Oh yeah, we gave seller concessions for his closing costs. Now I'm looking and it's showing that the agent is, or the buyer's crediting his agent with the money I gave him. I'm pissed. That's not what it's for. Too bad. What we ought to put in our contracts, if you're asking for concessions, is this language. All concessions can be used towards any fees related to the transfer of this property. A commission is a related fee. Gives you the right to put it anywhere you want. In other words, if I was an agent, I'm representing a buyer, and I tell the seller, hey, guess what, man? Thanks for doing my deal. I got a great commission. I'm going to go out and buy a car. Does that seller have the right to tell me how to use my money? No. So as the buyer, I'm going to buy a car with it. He can't tell me how to use the money. Therefore, it's legal. He may be pissed. He can scream all the way to the frickin' title company as he signs the deed, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. As long as we have that language in there that says any fee related. Well, guess what? My agent also has the fee. So there we go. So that's some of the things that we can do. Again, want to make sure that you guys really understand what we're dealing with, how we can deal with this, and what are some of the avenues in which we can see some things happening, okay? The other thing that we can cover is, as listing agents, we've always had on the MLS, which is not there anymore. Sorry, we got a fly around here. We've got it on the MLS. We've always had to put in the commission, right? Well, that's gone. But you remember a little line item that said a variable commission? We're going to see that. We're going to see a lot of that. So here's what we're going to see and be ready for. And we can talk about this later too. Hey, got a house for $500,000. Market slow. House has been on the market 125 days. Okay, we're going to offer $485,000. I'm going to send in my additional compensation form for 2.5%. The guy's going to say, hey, if you can get me $500,000, get your buyer up $15,000. I'll pay you the 2.5%. If you want this deal done at $485,000, I'm going to pay you 1.5%. I'm not taking the whole beating. You're going to participate in the beating, Mr. Buyer Agent. So here's the deal. Anything below 500, you get 1.5%. Anything at 500, you get the full 2.5%. Those are variable commissions. Okay. So how do we handle that? Well, you're going to have to be able to go in there and strong arm somebody and say, hey, that's not going to work. Here's what I would do. Let me do this. $500,000 house. Let me go to my buyer and see if they got $5,000 they're willing to give me. I doubt it, but let me go to my buyer and see if there's $500,000 that he wants to send me. Because I've got a buyer broker agreement for 2.5%. So he's going to have to come up with the other 5. I don't think he's gonna. I think he's going to ask me. He's not a fussy buyer. I think he's going to ask me to show him some other houses. Do you want to lose this deal over $5,000? Does your seller want to lose this deal over $5,000? I mean, you want me to hang up the phone and call him now, or do you want to wait and make another call to your buyer or your seller? And then I'll wait on your call. Let me know what you're thinking. Okay, so we're going to see some variable commissions there. Hey, you know what? Especially in a sluggish market. The other thing, too, I want to talk to you guys real briefly about is I just had a buyer call me and says, hey, I want to buy a house now. I said, why? He says, I think the feds are going to drop the interest rate in September. I said, okay. He goes, hey, if they drop the interest rate in September a half a point, I think there's going to be a rush on homes. I think we're going to see multiple offers and stuff like that. So I'm thinking if I buy a house now, I put it on a 45-day escrow. By that time, we'll see a reduction in the interest rate. We'll see a break on the interest rate, and I'll lock in then. So if you have idiot clients out there that are trying to time the apex of the market, now might be a time to time the market. Interest rates look like they're going to go down in September. Okay. Also, a friend of mine he works for Rocket Mortgage. He just put out, and I'll just tell you, he just put out a, what do they call them, flash sale. And Rocket Mortgage was offering 5.99% financing for qualified buyers. So the market's going to shift a little bit. Okay. And I think 2025 is going to be a pretty good year. I think we're going to be past the elections. I think we're going to see some recovery in the inflation rate. And I think that we're going to see interest rates drop. And anything, I can tell you, anything sub probably 6.75, we're going to see probably some demand go back up. Keep in mind, our inventory is still at a dangerous level. It's still pretty low. The problem is that what we had was inventory levels here with demand way up here. Lately, we've seen inventory levels here with demand way down here. We start raising that demand, we're going to see a rush on homes. Hey, go sell some houses, get some guys off the list. Give me a call if you have any questions about anything I've said here. And here's the last thing. I want you guys, when you finish watching this video, when you finish watching this video, I want you to put your name in the comment line and the word Sun Devils. Then I know that you watched the video. I need you guys to watch this. There's the industry's changed, and we need to be on top of our game. Other than that, guys, and I got to protect my brokerage. Keep that in mind. Not only do I got to protect my brokerage, I got to protect you, and I got to protect this idiot. Have a great day, guys. I'll see you soon. Call me with any questions about this video. Look forward to the chat.